Okay, in this next clip, we got Herman Cain being interviewed by Glen Beck, and it's a number of half-truths, lies, and just misleading statements that Herman Cain makes. And it wouldn't be a big deal except he's running for president, and when someone runs for president, normally it is what it is. But with Herman Cain, it's not what it seems. It, he's just constantly making misstatements. So let's listen to the first one.
May I?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Here's the first one. You were a Fed chairman?
Yes. I was chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City. As you know, there are 12 banks, and they all have their citizens board. And I got elected to the Fed chairmanship for the Federal Reserve Kansas City Bank back in the mid-'90s. It might have been around 1995, 96. This is when Alan Greenspan was the chairman of the Federal.
Okay.
No, there are 12 banks.
So, first he says that he was elected. Okay, technically he might have been elected by the banks. The banks may elect, he may be nominated by, I don't know, whoever happens to be overall chairman of the whole Federal Reserve, or by the president. Somebody nominates him, and then the member banks of the Federal Reserve, quote, elect him. But we don't consider that, in the standard parlance, elected. Normally elected means naturally you're going to be elected by the public. But in this case, it's not a public election. And he says it's a citizen board. Call it whatever you want, but if me or you went, say we're running for the chairman of the Kansas City Fed, they'd look at us like crazy. And then the dates he mentions, 95, he says he thinks about 95, 96. I don't know why he has to think about it, or why he has to say about 95 or 96. I mean, he's a well-known, he's not that well-known to run for president, but he must know his background. I don't know. Just strange the way he put it. But he doesn't mention, the part he doesn't mention is that back in 92, he started at the Fed in 92. He's a former deputy chairman in 1992 to 94, and a chairman from 95 to 96. So it's roughly 4 years. So I guess he's just trying to minimize and his experience, fudge it away. It's not that major, but it is, because he's running for president. That's just the start of it.
And they all have their citizens board. And I got elected to the Fed chairmanship for the Federal Reserve Kansas City Bank back in the mid-'90s. It might have been around 1995, 96. This is when Alan Greenspan was the chairman of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors out of Washington, D.C. Yes, I was proud of the work of serving on that board for the following reasons. That Federal Reserve didn't do any of the stuff that this Federal Reserve is doing. Secondly, Alan Greenspan never allowed the Fed to become politicized. And the other difference between today and then is that we didn't have this $14 trillion debt to deal with, and as a result, they didn't have to inflate our currency the way this Federal Reserve Board is doing it. So, yeah.
Okay. Now, it's more, 2 or 3 more inaccuracies. It just isn't true that there wasn't substantial money printed by the Federal Reserve. Alan Greenspan printed billions of dollars. And that's how we are today. That's how we got where we are today. It didn't start under Ben Bernanke. Alan Greenspan started the housing boom by printing billions to stimulate the economy, and it's just totally inaccurate. Here we go. Let's see here. 1992. 1992, the monetary base started at $332 billion. That's in 92. And then in 96, by the time he left in 96, we're looking at a monetary base of 485 billion. Almost 500 billion. So we went from 332, roughly 200 billion. 332 to 485. So it went up a monetary base of 200 billion. An increase of 200 billion, that's not factual. It's not factual to say that they didn't, under Alan Greenspan, we didn't print a lot of money. The Fed under Alan Greenspan was just as bad. And then, if we look at the national debt, the national debt in 92 was 4 trillion. Went from 4 trillion under President Bush to 5.3 trillion under Clinton. So we're looking at an increase of roughly 1.1 or so trillion dollars. Now, $1 trillion, that's significant. So the claim that the Federal Reserve under Alan Greenspan was so much better and they didn't have the problems that we have now to deal with, it's just not true. I mean, we did have significant problems back then. No, they weren't as bad as they are right now, but it's just not true that they didn't print. Alan Greenspan printed billions of dollars to stimulate the economy. That's a fact. Let's listen to the rest.
I did serve on the board. There was a citizens board that they have for each one of them, and that was back in the 1990s.
All right. Now I know that because of the 12 different boards, that there are a few of them, and I'm trying to remember if Kansas City is one of the more conservative ones. I think it is.
It is.
There are Fed chairmans, Fed. What do you call them at that level? Presidents that actually feed us information like, okay, this is really screwed up. I mean, there are those members of the Fed that agree with me more than disagree with me.
In fact, Glenn, let me insert this. Tom Honig is the president of the Kansas City Federal Reserve Bank. You know, he's the full-time guy who runs things. He is one of the ones that has pushed back on many of these decisions that Ben Bernanke has been making over the past couple of years. When I was chairman of the Federal Reserve Board of Kansas City, Tom Honig was the guy that I, along with the rest of the board members, recommended to Alan Greenspan and the Board of Governors to be president for exactly that reason. He has stood by the principles that the Federal Reserve was supposed to stand by.
All right. Are you for or against auditing the Fed?
I do not object to auditing the Fed. I absolutely do not object to auditing the Fed. What I said was, it's not going to be an issue that I'm going to carry the water on, but I would not object to it. It's just not an issue that I want to take a leadership role on.
How come?
because I don't believe they're going to find anything, to be perfectly honest, based upon what I know about the Fed. Secondly, they have internal controls out of the wazoo. I saw them. I was there on the board and, got familiar with some of them. So this is why I would rather focus on what do we need to do to truly boost this economic growth.
Okay, right there. Herman Cain says, well, we don't really need to audit the Fed because they have controls out the wazoo. And he doesn't think they're going to find anything. And I suppose when Bloomberg filed their Freedom of Information Act lawsuit with the Fed demanding to know where the billions of dollars, trillions of dollars went that the Fed spent trying to bail out the economy trying to bail out the banks back in 2008, that didn't happen. Let's take a look. Okay, the court ordered the Fed to disclose emergency bank loans. Bloomberg filed a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit. And the Fed refused to name the financial firms it lent or disclose the amounts or the assets put up as collateral under 11 programs put in place during the deepest financial crisis since the Great Depression. So Bloomberg filed this lawsuit, and the court ruled that the Fed has to divulge the names of the banks that got these funds from the Federal Reserve. So this is the type of information that we would find out if the Federal Reserve was audited. Bloomberg basically forced the information out of the Fed without an audit. So if we had a real audit, what else would we find out? There isn't any reason not to audit them. But Herman Cain, he says, no, they have internal controls. Internal controls, what are internal controls going to do for us? Congress and the people, they want to know what's going on inside the Federal Reserve. What are they doing with the billions and trillions of dollars that they print? Where is it going? But Herman Cain says, no, we don't need to know because they have internal controls. Internal controls don't translate into informing the public. Internal controls are for internal officials, not for the public. So it's just another inaccuracy on his part. And here's another point on Herman Cain says Alan Greenspan's Fed was totally different than Bernanke's. We have this chart showing historical inflation rates. And if we go back to 1992, we're looking at inflation rates of roughly around 3% a year, 3%, 2.9, 2.6, 2.8, 2.9%, and it adds up to about over 14% inflation during the period that Herman Cain was chairman of the Fed and deputy chairman. So much for Alan Greenspan's Fed being so great. Okay, let's listen to the rest of the video.
This is why I would rather focus on what do we need to do to truly boost this economic growth. Lowering corporate tax rate, personal tax rate, taking the capital gains tax rate to zero, suspending taxes on repatriated foreign profits so they can come home, provide a real payroll tax holiday of the full 6.2% for employees and employers, and then you make them permanent until we can totally replace the tax code with the national sales tax, which is the fair tax, which I support.
Okay.
Number one priority.
So far, all of that that all sounds great.
Okay, it sounds like another inaccuracy there. Because he said he wants to eliminate all these taxes, reduce these taxes, until he can totally redo the tax code and eliminate, I guess, all income taxes, corporate income, and individual income taxes, payroll taxes, replace them with a fair tax. But his plan, his 999 plan, is to institute a 9% sales tax, 9% corporate income tax, and a 9% individual income tax. So that's part of his plan to initially, not in the future, yes, in the future he wants a fair tax, but for now, he wants to institute this 999 plan, including instituting a nationwide 9% sales tax. That's a brand new tax that we don't have right now. And of course, yes, 9%. We would pay 9% theoretically on everything else, on our corporate individual taxes, and then we would additionally pay an additional 9% on a national sales tax for whatever we bought, in addition to our local sales taxes. So it's a whole new tax that we would have to pay. And he just seemed to leave it out. He was moving kind of quickly there, but I didn't really hear him say he wanted to institute a 9% sales tax. That's what he says on his website. That's what the 999 plan is. It just seems like he just has a tendency to skip over stuff. I mean, he's running for president. The details are important. He has his proposal, and I don't know, he just seems to forget what he's saying, or he doesn't want to totally inform us. I don't know. Okay, let's continue to listen.
I'm loving that. Let me go to the fair tax.
Yeah.
Explain to me how, and I'm not a fair tax expert. I have not, this tax thing has not been one of my issues.
Right.
I mean, other than abolishing the IRS, the fair tax always has bothered me, and explain where I'm wrong.
Okay.
The thing that bothers me about our tax code is it's 80,000 pages, and any special interest group can come in and make the argument that, well, no, we need the break here, we need the break here. That's why I'm for a flat tax. There's no questions on it. A national sales tax, how does that not turn into exactly what we have? Just huge taxes on, let's say, yachts, because yachts become unpopular, or trans fats, because trans fats become unpopular.
Right.
How does it not turn into that?
Well, first of all, the fair tax, which is the national sales tax, it is taxed on consumption and not taxed on income. The Steve Forbes flat tax version was still on income. And as long as it's on income, you have the lobbyists come in trying to lobby for their organization that they represent to try to get a favor in there, and that's why we have what we have today. Now, with the fair tax, the politicians, Congress cannot change that statutory rate today. That's what's in the legislation at 23%. They can't change it without a super majority vote, which means that the American public is going to know about it before they start messing with it. So this is how we don't end up going back to the same type of system that we have today, because individuals determine their tax based upon their purchase behavior, not the government based upon your income.
Okay, individuals don't determine their tax based on their purchase behavior. If you need to buy stuff, then you just have to pay the tax regardless. So, it's just, I don't know, it's another misstatement. We can't determine our tax rates. And if we have to buy stuff, we have to buy it. It's not, sometimes we don't have the option of not buying something we have to get. And 9% sales tax, it is going to impact some people. Some low-income people will be impacted. They would be impacted by such a plan. There are low-income people right now who are paying very little or no income tax, or maybe even getting the earned income credit. And now they're going to be paying an income tax 9%, plus they're going to be paying a 9% sales tax. And we don't know what the effect will be on these people on the low end of the pay scale. And they need what they need. If you don't have a lot of discretionary income, and then the government's going to put a 9% tax on everything you buy, it's going to hurt them. So that's a reality of the idea of a 9% sales tax and a flat 9% income tax. It may sound appealing because it seems more fair. Everybody pays their fair share. But it will have a real impact. And saying that everybody determines their tax rate by their purchase behavior is just misleading. Let's just face the facts. It will, if we want to have a 9% flat tax, let's just say it's the best way. Everybody has to, quote, pay their fair share. Well, let's not try to sugarcoat it. It is what it is. If it's better, it's better. Sugarcoating it doesn't change the facts.
But Herman, how do we get rid of? I mean, it just seems like such a fairy tale that we could ever get rid of the IRS. How do you actually? Don't get us wrong. We're for this. We want to, but to physically get rid of the IRS is virtually impossible at this point. What are there 56 co-sponsors of this bill? How are you ever going to get enough people on board with this? You'd need a constitutional amendment to do it. Yeah.
Right. Okay. You got two questions there. I'm going to answer both of them. The first one is, in the fair tax legislation, which is H.R. 2125, it has a provision in there that it does not go into effect until the 16th Amendment is repealed. In other words, it's in there. It can't go into effect until the 16th Amendment is repealed, which is the amendment that allows the government to tax income. So, secondly, how do we get this thing done? You get the American people to understand it so they can support it and they can demand it. That is the difference. This is why, as president, I'm not going to try to get the fair tax passed immediately. I want to do those other points that I indicated, because we need an immediate boost to the economy. But during that first couple of years, I will be educating and informing the public so they understand it. And if they understand it, then we'll have the public support that we need in order to pass the fair tax, which would also then abolish the IRS.
Okay. Do we have Herman until the bottom of the hour? How much time do we have with? Can we keep you till the bottom of the hour or not?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Let me take a quick break and then we'll come back and we'll continue our conversation.
Glen Beck.
We're with Herman Cain. He's running for president of the United States, and I want to play his Israel policy. Here's what he has said recently.
The Cain doctrine to the world would simply be, if you mess with Israel, you're messing with the United States of America. Don't mess with us. Don't mess with us.
I wish I could say things like that and come off credible. Don't mess with us. I just wish I could do that. Herman,
yes.
You are a supporter of Israel, as I am. Why?
Yes.
Why?
The reason is, number one, they have been a staunch ally of ours in that part of the world.
Okay, let's not get into
I don't believe in Netanyahu.
Right now.
I consider what the majority of the American people feel.
I mean, I would trust them in a cabinet level. Well, where's that coming from?
First of all, Glenn, that statement is not what I said. It
level.
Most Americans, the majority of Yahoo, I consider that an ambush. So I think he has damaged the relationship.
Do you believe I believe we're on the wrong side for the first time in our history on this issue. Do you believe we're on the wrong side?
What do you mean, being on Israel's side?
Being on that we are, those who bless Israel will be blessed. Those who curse Israel will be cursed.
Most Americans, the majority. Let's put it this way: the majority of Americans support Israel. What this
controversial that you have said. You have said that you will not appoint, if you were president, you would not appoint as a federal judge or at a cabinet level any Muslim. I have good friends that are Muslim that I think are, I trust them as an advisor. I would trust them in a cabinet level. Where's that coming from?
First of all, Glenn, that statement is not what I said. It has been misconstrued. I was doing an event in Des Moines Hour, and a reporter from Huffington Post asked me, which you can verify online, you can go look it up. He said, would you be comfortable with a Muslim in your cabinet? And I immediately said, without thinking, no, I would not be comfortable.
Actually,
I did not say that I would not have them in my cabinet, because if you look at my career, I have hired good people regardless of race, religion, sex, gender, or orientation, and this sort of thing. So the comment was I wouldn't be comfortable because I do have a problem with Sharia law. I believe in American laws and American courts. So I was coming at it from the perspective of thinking about Sharia law. Secondly,
hang on just a sec. For the audience listening, we have the audio, and I can play it later. That's exactly what happened. He is reporting it. I just asked Pat again to make sure that was accurate. But he's leaving out one important thing. The reporter said, in your cabinet or as a federal judge. And so when I watched this and you said, no, I wouldn't be comfortable, a federal judge, you went right into Sharia law. I would agree with a Muslim on as a federal judge if it's a blanket, hey, I want to make sure I know that individual.
Right.
It's like, there's good Catholics, bad Catholics, good Mormons, bad Mormons. I want to make sure I know that individual.
Yep.
So
I agree.
You're not saying that you're clarifying here that you would not make a blanket statement for anybody.
Okay, seems like another misstatement. I mean, we don't know what he really meant. He says that he didn't really mean that he wouldn't be willing to appoint a Muslim. Just he said he wouldn't be comfortable with appointing a Muslim, but he didn't really mean it in that manner. So we don't know what's going through the man's mind. But seems like another misstatement. So it doesn't seem like Herman Cain's ready for prime time, running for president, and he just doesn't get a lot of stuff right. That's it for today.